The Duke of Ashford stood alone in the portrait gallery of Thornwood House, staring at the painting of a woman who had been dead for 8 years. Alaric James Blackwood was 36 years old. He owned 17 estates across England, held seats in the House of Lords, commanded a fortune that could have rebuilt half of London, and possessed a title that opened every door in the British Empire. Yet the marble halls of his Grosvenor Square mansion echoed with a silence so profound it felt like drowning. His wife, Lady Genevieve, had died bringing their stillborn daughter into the world in the winter of 1847. Since then, Alaric had become a ghost haunting his own life, managing properties with cold efficiency, voting on bills in Parliament without passion, attending obligatory functions without joy. He fulfilled every duty except the one that mattered, living. The gilt-edged invitation lay on the side table, mocking him with its elegant script. Her Majesty Queen Victoria requests the honor of your presence at the Royal Benevolent Ball for the Society for the Protection of Destitute Children, St. James's Palace, June 15, 1855. Your Grace, forgive the intrusion, I thought you'd retired for the evening. He turned to find Verity Ashcroft standing in the doorway, a freshly ironed copy of the Times in her hands, her grey maid's uniform impeccable despite the late hour. At 29, she was too educated to be in service, too proud to accept advancement beyond her station, and too stubborn to leave despite his repeated offers of better positions. Verity. He used her Christian name, a privilege she'd granted him after 3 years of impeccable service. Tell me, do you believe a man can be surrounded by hundreds of servants, thousands of subjects, and still be utterly, completely alone? She didn't offer platitudes. That was what he valued most about her, honesty delivered with devastating precision. I believe, Your Grace, that loneliness has nothing to do with the number of people who serve you. It's about whether anyone truly sees you. Her grey eyes, the color of winter storms, held something he hadn't seen in 8 years, genuine understanding, not pity. In that moment, Alaric Blackwood made a decision that would scandalize London, destroy his carefully maintained social standing, and somehow, miraculously, save his life. Miss Ashcroft, I have a proposition that will sound utterly mad, but I'm going to ask anyway. He paused, watching her expression shift from confusion to curiosity. The Queen's ball is in 3 weeks. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of accompanying me? The newspaper slipped from her fingers, pages scattering across the Aubusson carpet like fallen leaves. Neither of them realized that this single question would ignite the scandal of the decade, and the greatest love story Mayfair had ever witnessed. The newspaper slipped from Verity's fingers, pages scattering across the Aubusson carpet like fallen autumn leaves. She stood frozen in the doorway of the portrait gallery, her grey maid's uniform suddenly feeling too tight, too hot, too inadequate for the conversation that was clearly about to unfold. Your Grace, that's impossible. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I'm your maid. Alaric James Blackwood, Duke of Ashford, turned fully to face her. In the candlelight, his features seemed softer than usual, less the distant aristocrat she served, more the man she'd occasionally glimpsed late at night when he thought himself alone. You're also the most intelligent person in this house, Verity. Perhaps in all of Mayfair. She bent quickly to gather the scattered papers, needing something to do with her trembling hands. Intelligence doesn't qualify one for St. James's Palace, Your Grace. Pedigree does. Titles do. Neither of which I possess. To her shock, he knelt beside her, helping collect the pages. His fingers brushed hers as they both reached for the same sheet, the Times coverage of parliamentary debates. The brief contact sent an unexpected spark up her arm. Tell me, he said quietly, his grey eyes meeting hers with unsettling directness. Why did you take this position 3 years ago? You're overqualified to be arranging my correspondence and managing household accounts. Verity sat back on her heels, considering whether to give him the truth or the polite deflection she'd perfected. Something in his expression, genuine curiosity without condescension, made her choose honesty. My father was Reverend Thomas Ashcroft of St. Hilda's Parish in Whitby. He educated me himself, Latin, Greek, French, mathematics, literature. He believed daughters deserved the same intellectual development as sons. She paused, the familiar ache of loss tightening her chest. He died of typhoid fever 3 years ago. Mother had already passed from consumption. He left debts. I had my younger brother Tobias to support. He's studying medicine in Edinburgh. So you took domestic service rather than accept parish charity, Alaric finished, understanding dawning in his eyes. I send most of my wages north to keep Toby in university. He's brilliant, Your Grace. He'll save lives one day. She gathered the last of the papers, standing. Which is why I cannot possibly risk this position by creating a scandal. Attending the Queen's ball as your companion would be social suicide for both of us. Alaric rose as well, moving to lean against the marble mantelpiece. I'm expected to court Lady Sophronia Hartley. My mother is pushing the match relentlessly. Do you know Lady Sophronia? I've never met her, Your Grace. Count yourself fortunate. She's 23, beautiful as a porcelain doll, and possesses all the depth of a puddle. Our conversations consist entirely of weather observations and gossip about people I don't care about. He ran a hand through his dark hair in obvious frustration. The ball benefits the Society for Destitute Children. It's meant to raise awareness and funds for orphans living in workhouses. Verity's breath caught. I volunteer there. Every Sunday, at the Foundling Hospital in Bloomsbury. His expression shifted, surprise mixed with vindication. I know. Mrs. Thornbury, the director, mentioned you to me 6 months ago. She said you read to the children, that they call you their story angel. Heat crept up Verity's neck. I didn't realize you knew. I know more than you think. He pushed away from the mantelpiece, his intensity making the space between them feel charged. That's exactly my point, Verity. Lady Sophronia has never volunteered a day in her life. She'll attend the ball in a gown worth more than those children see in a year, and she won't remember a single thing about their plight. But you actually care. You serve them because it matters, not because it looks charitable. Your friends will destroy me, Verity said quietly. They'll mock my clothes, my accent, my background. I'll embarrass you before the soup course. My friends, Alaric said, his voice taking on a hard edge, are shallow, judgmental peacocks who've never worked for anything in their lives. If they mock you, it will reveal their character, not yours. Verity studied him, truly looked at him, perhaps for the first time since entering his employ. At 36, he carried the weight of his title like a suit of armor, protecting himself from genuine connection. But tonight, in this candlelit gallery, that armor seemed to have cracked. I have nothing suitable to wear, she said finally. A maid's wage doesn't cover St. James's Palace requirements. My mother's wardrobe. She was your height in her younger years. Isolde would be delighted to help, she's been complaining about my social isolation for years. Verity bit her lip, thinking of Tobias, of the children at the hospital, of the impossible man standing before her asking the impossible question. If I agree, and that's a significant if, I have one absolute condition. Name it. If anyone asks who I am, you tell them the truth. No pretense, no deception. I go as myself or not at all. A slow smile spread across Alaric's face, transforming his usually serious expression. You have more nobility in that honesty than most of the peerage possess in their titles, Miss Ashcroft. He extended his hand formally. Do we have an agreement? One evening, in service of children who desperately need advocates. Verity hesitated for only a moment before placing her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm, solid, unexpectedly gentle. That spark again, stronger this time, racing up her arm and settling somewhere near her heart. One evening, she agreed. Then everything returns to normal. Of course, he said, but neither of them moved to release the other's hand. Finally, Verity pulled away, suddenly aware of impropriety. It's late. Good night, Your Grace. She fled before he could respond, her heart hammering against her ribs as she climbed the narrow servant stairs to her small attic room. Behind her, Alaric remained in the portrait gallery. He walked slowly to where his late wife's painting hung, studying Genevieve's serene face by candlelight. I think I'm ready to live again, he whispered to the image. Forgive me for taking so long. Forgive me for finding joy again. He touched the frame gently, then turned away toward his own chambers. In her narrow attic room, Verity sat at her small desk, pulling out writing paper. Her hands still trembled as she dipped her pen in ink. Dearest Toby. Something impossible happened tonight. The Duke has asked me to accompany him to the Queen's ball at St. James's Palace. I said yes, though I fear I've lost my mind entirely. But perhaps madness is what we both needed, him to step back into life, me to glimpse something beyond these walls. I'm terrified. But I'm also, impossibly, excited. All my love, V. She sealed the letter, then blew out her candle and lay in darkness, staring at the ceiling. 3 weeks until the ball. 3 weeks until her carefully ordered world either expanded into something beautiful or exploded into disaster. She whispered into the darkness, Father, if you're watching, please let me not disgrace your memory. Outside her window, London slept. But inside Thornwood House, 2 people lay awake in separate rooms, wondering what they had just set in motion. And neither could have imagined how profoundly that single question, will you accompany me, would change everything. For days later, Alaric pushed through the heavy oak doors of White's Club on St. James's Street, immediately enveloped by the familiar sense of cigar smoke, aged brandy, and old money. The most exclusive gentlemen's club in London was populated by men who'd inherited everything and earned nothing, a fact that had begun to grate on him more with each passing year. Ashford. Finally. Lord Octavius Pemberton waved from the billiards room, cue stick in hand. At 39, Octavius had inherited his title at 21 and hadn't done a day's productive work since. Thought you'd abandoned our weekly tradition. Merely delayed, Alaric replied, accepting a brandy from a passing footman. Viscount Phineas Wickliffe lounged in a leather chair nearby, shuffling a deck of cards with practiced ease, a gambler's habit even when no game was in play. So, Phineas said, his tone casual but his eyes sharp, the Queen's ball is in 2.5 weeks. Which fortunate lady gets the honor of your company? Lady Sophronia's practically ordered her trousseau. Alaric lined up his shot, deliberately casual. Actually, I'm escorting Miss Verity Ashcroft. The click of billiard balls was the only sound for 3 full seconds. Ashcroft? Octavius frowned. Don't know the family. Who's her father? Anyone we know? Reverend Thomas Ashcroft of Whitby. Deceased. Phineas's cards slipped from his hands, scattering across the table. A vicar's daughter. From Yorkshire. She's currently employed in my household, Alaric continued, taking his shot with deliberate precision. As a maid. The billiard cue clattered to the floor as Octavius dropped it. You're jesting. This is one of your dry humor moments. I'm entirely serious. Octavius's face went through several expressions, confusion, disbelief, then cruel amusement. His laugh started low and built to a roar that echoed through the billiards room and into the adjoining spaces. This is magnificent. Octavius wiped tears from his eyes. The mad Duke of Ashford has finally cracked. Other club members began gravitating toward the commotion like vultures to carrion. Lord Cornelius Hartley, Earl of Winchester and Lady Sophronia's father, appeared in the doorway, his florid face already suspicious. What's this about? Winchester demanded. Phineas, nervous laughter bubbling up, explained, Ashford's taking his maid to the Queen's ball. The silence that followed was deafening. Then chaos erupted. Your maid. Winchester's face purpled. My daughter has been patient, waiting for you to finish your mourning period, and you repay her by bringing your servant to the season's most important event. Octavius circled Alaric like a predator. Can she even curtsy properly, or will she scrub the ballroom floor out of habit? Laughter rippled through the growing crowd of observers. Does she know which fork is for fish? Someone called from the back. Or will she eat with her hands like a peasant? She probably owns 2 dresses, Octavius continued, warming to his theme. Both grey wool and smelling of lye soap. Phineas, trying to sound helpful despite his smirk, added, "Alaric, old friend, think rationally. Your maid. To meet the queen. She'll be eaten alive by the ladies before the soup course. She'll call the duchess milady instead of your grace," another voice suggested. "She'll curtsy to the footmen. She'll use the finger bowl as a drinking cup." The mockery built like a wave, each man trying to outdo the last in cruelty disguised as concern. Alaric's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. "Verity is more educated than half the titled ladies you're suggesting. She speaks 3 languages fluently, has read more classical literature than most of you combined, and actually understands what charity means beyond writing checks for social credit. Education doesn't teach proper deportment," Winchester snapped. "My Sophronia has been trained since birth for society. She knows how to handle herself at these events. Your maid will spend the evening committing social disasters while you frantically explain basic etiquette." Octavius leaned forward conspiratorially, though his voice carried to everyone in the room. "I'll wager £1,000 she commits at least 3 catastrophic social errors before dessert is served." "I'll match that," Phineas said, clearly enjoying himself now. "She'll use the wrong title for someone, curtsy incorrectly, and create at least one mortifying scene." £2,000 total, Octavius announced with savage glee. "That she embarrasses you so thoroughly you'll be the laughingstock of London for the entire season." Winchester stepped closer, his voice dropping to what he probably imagined was fatherly concern. "Ashford, I say this as your friend, Lady Sophronia is perfect for you. Titled, wealthy, appropriately trained. This fantasy with your maid is beneath you. It's beneath your title, your family name, your station." Alaric stood slowly, setting down his billiard cue with deliberate care. When he spoke, his voice was ice over steel. "Gentlemen, let me clarify something. Miss Ashcroft reads and writes fluent Latin, Greek, and French. Can Lady Sophronia conjugate a single verb correctly in any language, including English?" Silence. "Miss Ashcroft volunteers every Sunday at the Foundling Hospital in Bloomsbury, caring for orphan children with her own hands. What do your wives do? Shop at Madame Devies and gossip over tea?" Winchester's face darkened, but Alaric wasn't finished. "Miss Ashcroft has read Homer, Virgil, Dante, in their original languages. She could discuss philosophy, theology, or political economy with more genuine insight than anyone in this room. And unlike your perfect Lady Sophronia, Miss Ashcroft possesses something none of you can purchase at any price, genuine human compassion." Octavius's smile turned vicious. "Fine speech, Ashford. The wager stands. £2,000 she humiliates you." "Done," Alaric said coldly. "And when you lose, when, not if, you'll donate double that amount to the Foundling Hospital. In her name." He strode toward the exit, the crowd parting before him. Behind him, Winchester muttered to Octavius, "This is disastrous. We need to ensure she fails spectacularly, or he'll never see reason." Octavius's reply was quiet but carried clearly to Alaric's ears, "Oh, I'll make certain of it." Alaric walked through Mayfair's afternoon crowds, fury and doubt warring in his chest. "What have I done? I've painted a target on her back." By the time he reached Thornwood House, evening shadows stretched across Grosvenor Square. He found Verity exactly where he'd hoped, in the library, her Sunday afternoon ritual. She sat at the large reading table, surrounded by leather-bound volumes, carefully repairing the binding of what looked like a first edition. Her grey maid's uniform seemed incongruous against the scholarly scene. Alaric watched from the doorway, his heart settling. This was real. She was real, unlike the performative aristocracy he'd just escaped. She looked up, sensing his presence, and smiled. "Your Grace. I found a 1667 Paradise Lost misshelved. It should be in the locked case for protection." He entered the library, drawn like a moth to flame. "Keep it out. Read it. Milton understood that paradise isn't a place, it's a person." Her blush was immediate and charming. Yes, Your Grace." He wanted to tell her about the club, warn her about the vipers waiting to strike. But looking at her gentle expression, he couldn't bring himself to poison this moment with their cruelty. Instead, he made a silent vow, I will protect her from them. Whatever it costs me. 2.5 weeks until the ball, he said softly. No turning back now. No turning back, she echoed, though her hands trembled slightly on the ancient book. After he left, Verity sat alone in the fading light, touching the words of paradise lost with reverent fingers. She read aloud, her voice barely a whisper. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. She closed her eyes, wondering which one awaited her at St. James's Palace. 1 week until the ball. 7 days. 168 hours. Verity sat on her narrow attic bed at midnight, staring at her 3 dresses laid out before her like evidence of her own foolishness. Gray wool. Gray cotton. Gray linen. All maids' uniforms. All utterly, impossibly inadequate. Her savings sat in a small cloth purse, £8, 4 shillings. Most of her wages went north to Edinburgh, keeping Tobias in medical school. She'd watched society ladies in Hyde Park, seen their gowns, £50 minimum, often exceeding 100. The mathematics were brutally simple, impossible. Her breath came shorter. What was I thinking? I can't go to the Queen's ball in a maid's uniform. She pressed her hands to her face, willing herself not to cry. Crying solved nothing. But the pressure building in her chest demanded release, and finally, she buried her face in her pillow and wept. Father, she whispered to the darkness. I've made a terrible mistake. The knock at 6 the next morning startled Verity from restless sleep. Mrs. Drummond, the head housekeeper, stood in the doorway with an expression Verity couldn't quite read. The Dowager Duchess requests your presence, Mrs. Drummond said in her crisp Scottish accent. Immediately. Verity's stomach dropped. Has something happened? Just come, lass. And don't keep her grace waiting. The walk through the main house felt like a funeral march. Servants normally used the back stairs, but Mrs. Drummond led her through the family corridors, past portraits of stern Blackwood ancestors who seemed to judge her with painted eyes. At the Dowager's private chambers, Mrs. Drummond knocked once and opened the door without waiting for response. Isolde Blackwood sat in a silk dressing gown by the window, backlit by morning sun. At 63, she was still striking, silver hair coiled elegantly, sharp blue eyes that missed nothing, posture that could make generals stand straighter. Sit, child, Isolde commanded, gesturing to the chair opposite. We need to discuss your clothing crisis. Verity's face flamed. Your Grace, how did you? I've run this household for 40 years. You think I don't know when a girl is crying in the attic at midnight? Isolde's expression softened slightly. Mrs. Drummond has excellent hearing and a loyal heart. She came to me. I'm so sorry, Your Grace. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Stop apologizing. Isolde leaned forward. My son hasn't looked truly alive since Genevieve died 8 years ago. He's been a ghost in his own life, managing estates, attending Parliament, fulfilling obligations without joy. Then you arrived 3 years ago with your father's books and your stubborn pride, and slowly, I've watched him wake up. Verity stared, unable to form words. I've been watching you too, Isolde continued. The way you handle his correspondence with the same care most people reserve for love letters. How you reorganize his library on Sundays because you can't bear seeing books mistreated. The fact that you send most of your wages to support your brother's education rather than spend it on yourself. Your Grace. When my son asked you to that ball, I wanted to dance a jig. Finally, he chose something for himself. Something real. Isolde stood. Come with me. She led Verity to a locked room at the end of the corridor. The key hung on a chain around Isolde's neck, clearly this space was significant. The door opened to reveal a chamber frozen in time. Gowns hung in careful rows, each covered in muslin. Morning light filtered through gauze curtains, giving everything an ethereal quality. These were mine, Isolde said quietly. And my daughters, Lydia. She died of scarlet fever at age 8, before she could wear most of them. Verity's hand flew to her mouth. Isolde moved to a particular gown, uncovering it with reverent hands. Sapphire silk caught the light like water, the color of a summer midnight sky. The cut was classic, timeless, high waist, elegant lines, subtle embellishments that spoke of quality rather than ostentation. Lydia was blonde like you, Isolde said, her voice thick with emotion. This would have been her presentation gown at 18. She never got to wear it. She would have been 35 now. Your age. Your Grace, I couldn't possibly, Verity's voice broke. This is too precious. Isolde thrust the gown toward her fiercely. These dresses have hung and used for 27 years while my grief kept them prisoner. They deserve to live again. Lydia would have wanted this. She would have wanted to help a girl with compassion and courage show London what real nobility looks like. Both women were crying now, Isolde openly, Verity trying desperately to hold composure and failing. You'll wear this for her, Isolde said, pressing the silk into Verity's hands. And for those orphan children. And because my stubborn son finally chose his heart over his title. A knock interrupted them. Mrs. Drummond entered, carrying a tea tray, her eyes suspiciously bright. I've assembled the team, Your Grace, she announced. The team turned out to be the entire household staff who'd grown to love Verity over 3 years, Eliza the lady's maid, young and skilled with hair, Mr. Thornton the elderly butler who'd served 3 generations of Blackwoods, cook Mrs. Patterson, who'd been sneaking Verity extra portions for months, and Jonah, the young footman Verity had taught to read. Today, Isolde announced like a general addressing troops, we transform hope into reality. What followed was equal parts preparation and chaos. Eliza attempted elaborate hairstyles that collapsed spectacularly. Perhaps, something simpler, she suggested after the third failure left Verity looking like a bird had nested on her head. I look like I fought a chandelier and lost, Verity laughed, tears still drying on her cheeks. You look like a poodle with ambitions, Jonah added helpfully, earning a swat from Mrs. Patterson. They finally settled on elegant simplicity, Verity's natural golden curls arranged with pearl combs, soft waves framing her face. Mrs. Drummond produced a bewildering array of silverware, setting up an etiquette battlefield on the sitting-room table. I'm the Duchess of Marlborough, she declared in an exaggerated aristocratic accent. I'm known for being impossibly rude. What do you do? Verity curtsied. Your Grace, what a pleasure to finally meet. He couldn't speak. Just stared, his expression shifting through shock to wonder to something deeper she couldn't name. Well, don't just stand there, Isolde commanded. Tell the girl she's beautiful. Alaric cleared his throat, tried again. Verity, there are no words. A smile trembled on Verity's lips. Too much. Not enough words in the English language, he managed. After he left, practically fleeing, Isolde laughed quietly. That man is completely in love with you. He just doesn't know it yet. 7 days until the ball. 7 days until Verity's world either expanded into something beautiful or exploded into disaster. She whispered to her father's memory as she fell asleep, I hope I make you proud, Papa. 2 days before the ball, the portrait gallery at Thornwood House glowed with candlelight. Alaric stood alone among his ancestors' painted faces, adjusting his formal evening wear, white tie and tails, for what felt like the 100th time. This was Isolde's idea, a dress rehearsal. Practice wearing the clothes, she'd insisted. Practice moving together. You'll both feel more confident. He checked his pocket watch, 8 o'clock precisely. Any moment now. The soft click of footsteps on marble made him turn. Verity descended the small staircase at the gallery's end, and Alaric's breath simply stopped. The sapphire gown caught candlelight like liquid midnight. But it wasn't the dress that paralyzed him, it was her. The way she moved with careful grace, one hand trailing the banister. The way her golden hair caught the light. The nervous determination in her gray eyes. Your Grace, she said softly, reaching the bottom step. Your mother insisted I practice walking in these shoes. I feel ridiculous. You look. He trailed off, words failing completely. You've seen the gown before. 2 days ago, remember? I'm not looking at the gown. The air between them thickened. Verity's hand fluttered to her throat, a nervous gesture he'd learned to recognize over 3 years. Alaric cleared his throat, trying to recover his composure. We should practice. The first dance will be the most scrutinized. He offered his hand. She placed hers in it, and even through both their gloves, he felt that spark, the one that had been growing stronger each time they touched. He pulled her into waltz position, maintaining proper distance though every instinct screamed to draw her closer. They began moving across the marble floor, no music, just the echo of their footsteps and the whisper of silk. I keep wanting to look at my feet, Verity admitted. I'm terrified of stepping on your toes. Look at me, he said gently. Not the floor. Trust me. She raised her eyes to his. The moment their gazes locked, something shifted. The awkwardness evaporated. They moved together as if they'd been dancing for years, finding a rhythm that felt natural, inevitable. They circled the gallery in silence for a full minute, just breathing, moving, existing in this perfect bubble of candlelight and possibility. Then Alaric's jaw tightened. I need to tell you something. About what happened at White's club. Verity's steps faltered. What happened? He told her everything, Octavius's cruel laughter, the vicious mockery, the wager. The way they'd predicted her failures like a sport. Winchester's fury on Sophronia's behalf. The planning to ensure her humiliation. £2,000, he finished bitterly. That you'll embarrass me before dessert is served. Verity stopped dancing, stepping back from his embrace. For a long moment, she simply stood there, processing. Then her spine straightened. Her chin lifted. Something fierce sparked in her eyes. Let them wager, she said, her voice gaining steel. Let them scheme and plan and anticipate my failure. Verity. I'm not going to prove myself to them, Alaric. She used his Christian name deliberately, a small rebellion against propriety. I'm going for the children who need advocates. And perhaps. She paused, vulnerable again. And perhaps because I want to see what it feels like to be truly seen. Just once. He crossed to her, taking both her hands. I see you, Verity. I've seen you for 3 years. Every day you've worked in this house, I've seen your kindness, your intelligence, your grace. Then why now, she whispered. Why ask me to the ball now? His thumbs traced circles on her palms. Because these past weeks, preparing for this evening, I've felt something I haven't felt since Genevieve died 8 years ago. He didn't name it, couldn't name it, because speaking it aloud would make it real and terrifying. When she died, I buried my heart with her. I thought it was loyalty, honoring her memory. But I think. His voice cracked. I think it was cowardice. I was afraid to feel again. Afraid to want again. Afraid to live again. Verity's hands tightened on his. Grief isn't cowardice, your grace. It's love with nowhere to go. Those words, so simple, so perfect, broke something open in his chest. What if I'm ready, he asked, his voice barely audible. What if I'm ready to let it go somewhere again? What if it wants to go to you? The space between them evaporated. He leaned closer, his eyes dropping to her lips. She didn't pull away, didn't retreat. Her breath came faster. Inches separated them. He could feel the warmth of her skin, smell the lavender water she used. His hand rose to cup her face. Bedtime, children. Isolde's voice cut through the moment like a blade. They sprang apart like guilty teenagers. Isolde stood in the gallery entrance, a knowing smile playing at her lips. You need rest, she continued, utterly shameless in her interruption. 2 days until you change London society forever. Can't have you exhausted. Verity fled, face burning, murmuring hasty goodnights. Her footsteps echoed up the servants' stairs. Alaric remained frozen, one hand still raised where it had been about to touch her face. "You're welcome," Isolde said, moving to stand beside her son. "For what?" "Interrupting." "For saving you from making a declaration in a portrait gallery. When you finally kiss that girl, it should be somewhere more romantic than under your great-grandfather's judgmental gaze." She patted his cheek. "2 more days. Be patient." She left him alone with his ancestors and his racing heart. In her attic room, Verity couldn't sleep. She pulled out her journal, the one where she wrote letters to her deceased parents, a habit from childhood she'd never broken. "Dearest Mama and Papa. I think I'm falling in love with the Duke. I know it's impossible. I know it's foolish. After the ball, I'll still be a maid and he'll still be a duke, and the world doesn't allow for fairy tales like this. But for 2 more days, I'll let myself dream. Forgive me for wanting the impossible. Your loving daughter, V." She pressed the letter between the journal's pages and lay down, hugging her pillow, imagining it was different arms around her. In his chambers, Alaric stood before the fireplace, staring at Genevieve's portrait. He did this sometimes, spoke to her when decisions weighed heavy. "I'll always love you," he told the painted face. "You know that. You'll always be my first love, the mother of the child we lost." His voice broke. "But I think I'm allowed to love again. I think you'd want me to. You never wanted me to be alone." With trembling hands, he removed his wedding ring for the first time in 8 years. The band had worn a groove in his finger, a permanent mark of what had been. He placed it carefully in a velvet box. "Thank you for the years we had. I'm ready now. Ready to live again." He moved to his window, looking out over Grosvenor Square toward the servants' quarters where Verity slept in her small attic room. 2 days, he whispered to the night. "Please let me be brave enough." Cross-cutting between their rooms, both lay awake, thinking of each other. Both terrified. Both hopeful. Both wondering if after the ball, anything would be possible. Dawn broke over London, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. 2 days until everything changed. The city had no idea that a maid in a sapphire gown was about to shake the very foundations of society itself. June 15, 1855. The day arrived cloudless and perfect, as if London itself had decided to cooperate with the impossible. Thornwood House buzzed with energy from before dawn. In the servants' hall, the household staff was split between pride and terror. "Our Verity, going to meet the Queen," Mrs. Patterson declared, kneading bread with unusual vigor. "She'll be torn apart by those society vultures," countered Mary, the scullery maid. "They'll smell the lye soap on her and laugh her out of the palace." "Enough," Mrs. Drummond snapped. "We'll have none of that talk. Miss Verity has more grace in her little finger than those peacocks have in their entire bodies." Cook prepared an elaborate breakfast, eggs, kippers, fresh bread, jam, and insisted Verity eat. "You'll need your strength, lass. Can't faint in front of the Queen on an empty stomach." Jonah, the young footman, approached shyly as Verity picked at her toast. "Miss Verity, you taught me to read last year when everyone else said I was too stupid. Now you're going to show all of London what real quality looks like." Verity's eyes stung with tears. "Jonah, I'm terrified." "Good," he said earnestly. "Means you care. But you're going to be magnificent." At 2 o'clock, Isolde's chambers became mission headquarters. Eliza worked on Verity's hair with steady hands, creating an elegant arrangement of golden curls with pearl combs strategically placed. Higher on that side, Mrs. Drummond directed, supervising like a general. "She needs to look down on them." Literally. Mrs. Patterson hovered with smelling salts. "Just in case anyone faints. Possibly me." 2 hours of careful preparation. Verity sat perfectly still, trying not to think about the evening ahead, trying not to calculate all the ways this could end in disaster. At 5 o'clock, the sapphire gown came out. Eliza and Isolde helped her into it, 47 tiny buttons up the back, each one fastened with care. The corset made breathing difficult, but Verity suspected her nerves were equally responsible for her breathlessness. Finally, Isolde's heirloom necklace, sapphires and diamonds that had belonged to her mother, that had been worn by 5 generations of Blackwood women. "It's seen 3 kings and 2 queens," Isolde said, fastening the clasp. "One more ball won't hurt it." Verity touched the stones at her throat, feeling the weight of history and expectation. At 6 o'clock precisely, the household staff gathered in the main foyer, an unprecedented event. Servants never occupied the family spaces, but tonight, protocols were abandoned. Mrs. Drummond, normally stern and unflappable, had tears in her eyes. "You represent all of us tonight, dear. Every person they've ever overlooked." Cook pressed a lace handkerchief into Verity's hand. "My mother's. For luck." Jonah simply said, "I'll be praying for you all evening, Mississippi." Mr. Thornton, the elderly butler who'd served 3 generations of Blackwoods, bowed formally. "It has been my honor to serve alongside you, Miss Ashcroft. Tonight, you serve a higher purpose." Then Isolde appeared at the top of the stairs. "Gentlemen and ladies, your duchess-to-be." The deliberate word choice, duchess-to-be, sent a ripple through the assembled staff. Alaric waited in the center of the foyer, magnificent in white tie and tails, his ducal sash across his chest, family medals gleaming. He looked devastating and terrified in equal measure, checking his pocket watch obsessively. Then Verity appeared at the top of the curved marble staircase. Time stopped. She began her descent slowly, one hand on the banister, the sapphire gown catching light with each step. Every servant held their breath. Halfway down, her eyes found Alaric's. His expression, pure, unguarded love, gave her courage to continue. She reached the bottom, trembling, and he offered his hand. When she took it, electricity sparked between them. "There are no words, Verity," he said, his voice hoarse. "You're terrified I'll trip and fall face first into the Queen's lap," she offered, trying to lighten the moment. His laugh broke the tension. "Then we'll fall together." He offered his arm formally. "Miss Ashcroft, would you do me the extraordinary honor?" "The honor is mine, Your Grace." The enclosed ducal carriage, plush velvet seats, the Ashford crest on the door, carried them through Mayfair toward St. James's. Silence filled the space at first, both processing what lay ahead. Verity watched London pass, flower sellers calling their wares, street children playing, ordinary people living ordinary lives. Tomorrow, she'd return to being one of them. Alaric watched her face, reading her thoughts. "Verity, whatever happens tonight." She turned to him. "You've already changed everything. For me." He took her gloved hand, holding it tight. She asked questions to distract from mounting nerves. "Remind me, how do I address the Queen?" "Your Majesty, first, then ma'am, after." "And a duchess?" "Your Grace, always." "What if I forget everything?" "You won't. And if you do, I'll be right beside you." St. James's Palace loomed ahead, Tudor brick, royal standards flying, imposing and ancient. A queue of carriages glittered with nobility, ladies dripping jewels, men wearing medals and orders. Verity's grip on Alaric's hand tightened unconsciously. He squeezed back. "Remember what my mother said, you belong here as much as anyone. More, because you earned your place through character, not birth." "I'm doing this for the children," she whispered. "And for Lydia. And for every person society ever overlooked. That's my girl." Their carriage stopped at the entrance. Footmen opened the door. Photographers stood ready with magnesium flash equipment. Alaric stepped out first, then offered his hand to Verity. She stepped down into the flash of light and immediate whispers. "Who is she? Never seen her before." "That's the Duke of Ashford. Who's the girl?" Then she saw them, Lord Octavius Pemberton with his wife Lady Aurelia, dressed in elaborate rose silk. Viscount Phineas Wickliffe with a woman who was definitely not his wife. And Lady Sophronia Hartley in pink satin, looking furious. Octavius's voice carried deliberately, "Good God, he actually brought the servant. This will be magnificent entertainment." Aurelia's cutting laugh, "Look at that gown, it's ancient. Probably from his mother's attic. How quaint." Sophronia, shrill, "I can't believe he chose her over me. She's nobody." Verity is about to walk into a room full of people who've already decided she doesn't belong. Every step she takes represents everyone who's ever been told they're not good enough. If you've ever felt invisible, or judged, or underestimated because of where you came from instead of who you are, this next moment is for you. Stay with us, because what happens next will restore your faith and courage. Alaric stopped walking, turned to face them directly, his voice loud enough for everyone within earshot. "Good evening, Octavius, Aurelia, Lady Sophronia. May I introduce Miss Verity Ashcroft of Whitby, Yorkshire. Miss Ashcroft accompanies me tonight to support the Society for Destitute Children, where she volunteers every Sunday. Unlike some present, she understands charity is measured in hours served, not gowns worn." Aurelia flushed crimson. Sophronia looked ready to cry. Octavius sneered, "How touching. Shall we start the clock on her first social disaster?" Alaric guided Verity past them, through the massive palace doors. The entrance hall stole her breath, marble floors, gilt everywhere, portraits of monarchs, footmen in royal livery. Crystal chandeliers threw rainbow light across everything. Her quiet gasp of wonder was involuntary. Alaric, watching her face light up rather than the opulence, thought, This is exactly why." They joined the queue of guests waiting to be announced into the ballroom. Ahead, glittering chaos. Behind, judgmental whispers following like ghosts. "My heart is beating so loud they can probably hear it in Scotland," Verity whispered. "Mine too. Ready to shock London." Her smile, terrified but determined. "Ready as I'll ever be." The royal herald's voice boomed, "His Grace, the Duke of Ashford, and Miss Verity Ashcroft of Yorkshire." The doors swung open. 500 people turned to stare. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Verity froze for half a second. Alaric's whisper, "Breathe. I've got you." They began descending into the ballroom together. The performance of a lifetime had begun. There was no turning back now. The state ballroom at St. James's Palace was designed to intimidate. Frescoed ceilings soared 3 stories high, depicting classical scenes of triumph and glory. Massive chandeliers, each holding hundreds of candles, threw golden light across gilt everything. The parquet floor gleamed like glass, reflecting the jewels of 300 guests. Ladies wore gowns worth small fortunes. Men displayed orders and medals like armor. The orchestra played Strauss from a gallery above, the music competing with the hum of aristocratic conversation. As Alaric and Verity descended the stairs into this glittering chaos, the whispers began. "That's never one of the Ashcrofts from Derbyshire. I heard she's his housekeeper's daughter." "No, someone said she's actually his maid." "Surely not. The Duke of Ashford wouldn't dare." Verity heard every word. She raised her chin higher, remembering her father's voice, "Dignity costs nothing, daughter, but it's priceless." Alaric's hand pressed against her lower back, protective, possessive, grounding. They'd barely reached the ballroom floor when a formidable woman blocked their path. The Duchess of Marlborough was legendary, 67 years old, widow of one of England's wealthiest dukes, known for her sharp tongue and sharper judgments. She wore black silk dripping with diamonds, her white hair coiled like a crown. Ashford. Her voice could cut glass. "And who is this interesting companion?" Trap question. The dismissive tone designed to make Verity feel small. Verity executed a perfect curtsy. "Your Grace, I'm Verity Ashcroft of Whitby." "Ashcroft." The Duchess looked down her aristocratic nose. "And who are your people?" "Designed to expose common birth, to humiliate. My father was Reverend Thomas Ashcroft of St. Hilda's Parish, Your Grace. He educated me in classics, modern languages, and theology before his passing. The duchess's eyebrows rose fractionally. A scholar's daughter. Do you actually read the classics, girl, or just dust the library shelves? Alaric tensed, about to intervene, but Verity spoke first. I prefer reading to dusting, Your Grace. Currently working through Virgil's Aeneid in the original Latin. The passages concerning Dido and Aeneas are particularly moving, the tragedy of duty conflicting with love. Silence stretched for 3 long seconds. Then the duchess's face transformed into something resembling approval. A woman of actual learning. How refreshing after these vapid debutantes who can barely write their own names. Ashford, don't let this one escape. Intelligence is far more valuable than a dowry. She swept away, leaving a wake of shocked murmurs. First battle won. Miss Ashcroft. What a wonderful surprise. Mrs. Helena Thornbury, director of the Society for Destitute Children, rushed over with genuine delight. At 49, she wore simple gray silk and radiated passionate purpose rather than fashionable elegance. Your Grace, she addressed Alaric, did you know this remarkable young woman reads to our children every Sunday? The little ones call her their story angel. She brings her own books, sits for hours with the smallest ones who have nightmares. Nearby eavesdroppers suddenly reassessing Verity with new interest. Mrs. Thornbury continued enthusiastically, last winter, she donated £15 from her own savings to buy blankets when we ran short. 3 months' wages for her. The mental mathematics rippled through listeners. If £15 is 3 months' wages, she's definitely in service. But Mrs. Thornbury's genuine admiration was shifting the narrative from scandal to something more complex. Your Grace, Mrs. Thornbury said to Alaric, you've chosen well. Miss Ashcroft has done more for our children in 3 years than most society ladies do in a lifetime. Miss Ashcroft, what a quaint gown. Lady Aurelia Pemberton approached with Lady Sophronia Hartley in tow. Aurelia wore elaborate burgundy silk with emeralds dripping from her throat. Sophronia's pink gown had so many ruffles she resembled a decorated cake. Is it vintage? Aurelia's false sweetness could rot teeth. Sophronia giggled. It looks terribly old-fashioned. My modiste would never suggest something so historical. Other ladies circled closer, smelling blood, waiting for Verity to crumble. Verity remained perfectly calm. It belonged to Lady Lydia Blackwood, the Dowager Duchess's daughter. She died of scarlet fever before she could wear it. Her Grace honored me by allowing it to have the evening it deserved. Immediate gasps from listeners. Invoking a dead Blackwood daughter created unassailable moral ground. Even Aurelia couldn't mock that without appearing monstrous. Sophronia, oblivious to the trap she'd walked into, oh. Well. That's terribly sad, I suppose. Alaric's voice turned arctic. Indeed, Lady Sophronia. As sad as conversation devoid of any substance whatsoever. Sophronia didn't understand she'd been insulted. Aurelia did, her face flushing as she pulled Sophronia away before more damage could be done. Octavius appeared as they retreated, his expression dark. The wager wasn't going as planned. Guests for Her Majesty's dinner. The herald's announcement sent everyone toward the formal dining hall. Protocol dictated seating by rank, Alaric at the high table due to his ducal status. To everyone's shock, Verity was seated beside him rather than at a lower table. A deliberate choice that sent whispers cascading through the room. Their table companions, the Earl of Winchester, pompous, testing, the Countess of Bedford, kind, intelligent, the Lord Chancellor, intimidating, and the Bishop of London, sharp-eyed. Verity faced a battlefield of silverware, 7 forks, 4 knives, 3 spoons, 2 crystal glasses. Her mind raced through Mrs. Drummond's instructions, watch the hostess, work from outside in. The Earl of Winchester, Sophronia's father, addressed Verity with barely concealed condescension. Miss Ashcroft, what occupies your time in the countryside? Trap question. He expected needlework or gossip. I volunteer at the Foundling Hospital in Bloomsbury, tend my late father's theological library in his memory, and I've recently begun studying Italian. Reading Dante's Divine Comedy in its original language is transformative. The Earl's eyebrows shot up. You read Dante in Italian? Impressive. What do you make of the Paradiso? I prefer the Inferno, truthfully. The Paradiso is beautiful, but the Inferno feels more honest about human nature. The Countess of Bedford laughed delightedly. She's got you there, Winchester. Finally, someone who speaks truth instead of platitudes. Genuine conversation followed, discussion of literature, philosophy, the nature of redemption. The Lord Chancellor, initially intimidating, found himself drawn into debate about Dante's political allegories. During the fish course, Verity reached for the wrong spoon. Alaric's hand moved casually, switching it before anyone noticed. Under his breath, soup spoon, not dessert. Her grateful glance warmed him. Later, he reached for the salad fork for the fish course. She gently tapped his hand, switched them. Whispered, "Fish fork, Your Grace." Their quiet partnership, moving like dancers who'd rehearsed for years. Between courses, the Bishop of London asked about her father's parish. Verity described St. Hilda's with such love, her father teaching village children to read, holding services in storm-damaged churches, visiting sick parishioners regardless of weather. He believed every person carried divine worth, she said softly. That birth determined nothing about the soul's value. The bishop's eyes grew misty. Your father raised a daughter of true Christian virtue. He would be immensely proud of you tonight. Verity's composure cracked. Tears filled her eyes. Under the table, Alaric's hand found hers. Squeezed gently. She squeezed back, "Thank you. Thank you for this." Port served. The formal toast. To Her Majesty Queen Victoria. Everyone rose, glasses raised. Verity moved with perfect timing and grace, her curtsy exact. From lower tables, Aurelia watched with disappointment. Not a single error. Dinner concluded. Guests returned to the ballroom for dancing. The orchestra tuned up, anticipation building. Alaric stood, offering his arm. "Miss Ashcroft, may I have the honor of the first dance?" Verity, confidence growing with each small victory, "The honor would be mine, Your Grace." They moved toward the dance floor. Every eye followed. Octavius muttered to Phineas, "She hasn't failed yet." Not once. Phineas, uncomfortable, "Maybe we were wrong about her." Octavius, too proud to admit defeat, "The night's not over. She'll still embarrass him." The whole ballroom was watching. Let them watch. The orchestra began the opening strains of "The Blue Danube," and Alaric led Verity onto the dance floor. Other couples joined them, but Verity felt like they existed in a spotlight, every eye tracking their movement. His hand settled at her waist. Hers rested on his shoulder. Their other hands joined. Proper distance maintained, barely. "Look at me," he said softly as she started watching her feet. "Not the floor. Trust me, Verity." She raised her eyes to his. The moment their gazes locked, something shifted. The awkwardness evaporated like morning mist. They moved together as if they'd danced 1,000 times before, finding a rhythm that felt natural, inevitable, right. The waltz carried them across the floor in sweeping circles. Candlelight blurred into golden streams. The watching crowd faded to background noise. "I can't believe I'm waltzing at St. James's Palace," Verity breathed. "I can't believe I waited 3 years to ask you," Alaric replied. Her surprised look made him continue, "You've been extraordinary since the day you arrived at Thornwood House carrying your father's books and your pride. I was just too blind to see it. Or too afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid of this. Of feeling again. Of wanting again." Around them, the watching crowd observed with varied reactions. Isolde stood with Mrs. Thornbury near the refreshment tables. "Look at my son," the dowager whispered. "He's alive again. Truly alive. And our Verity is blooming like a rose in sunlight," Mrs. Thornbury added, dabbing her eyes. At the card tables, Octavius nursed his third brandy. She hasn't made a single mistake, he muttered to Phineas. Phineas shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we misjudged her. Look at them, he's in love. Octavius's expression darkened. It won't last. Reality will set in when the fairy tale ends. Near the windows, Aurelia and Sophronia watched with barely concealed jealousy. Why does he look at her that way? Sophronia whined. I'm more beautiful. Aurelia's response was bitter, because, you ninny, he doesn't want beauty. He wants authenticity. Something neither of us possess. The Duchess of Marlborough observed from her throne-like chair. That girl has more grace in her little finger than most of these peacocks have in their entire bodies, she announced to her companion. The first waltz ended. The orchestra transitioned immediately into a slower piece. Most couples paused to rest, to seek refreshment. Alaric pulled Verity fractionally closer. Another? People are staring, she whispered. Good. Let them see what it looks like when a man finds something real. They continued dancing, now nearly alone in the center of the floor. The intimacy intensified, still proper, but barely. Every brush of fabric, every shared breath felt significant. When this night ends, Verity asked quietly, what happens to us? What do you want to happen? Her honesty was devastating. I want this to be more than one magical evening. But I'm realistic, Alaric. His name on her lips sent electricity through him. Dukes don't marry maids. Fairy tales end at midnight. His hand tightened at her waist. Maybe they don't have to. Don't say things you don't mean. I have never meant anything more in my entire life. His voice dropped lower, intimate and fierce. These past weeks with you have shown me what I've been missing. Not just companionship, but connection. Not just conversation, but understanding. You make me want to be better. You make me want to live. Verity's eyes filled with tears. After tonight. Her Majesty, Queen Victoria. The royal herald's announcement cut through the moment like a blade. The music stopped abruptly. Every person in the ballroom turned toward the entrance, bowing or curtsying deeply. Alaric and Verity separated reluctantly, but his eyes never left her face as they both bowed to protocol. Queen Victoria entered with her ladies-in-waiting. At 36, she was small in stature but commanded the room with absolute presence. Her dark gown was relatively simple compared to the elaborate creations around her, but she dripped with the authority of the crown. She made a circuit of the ballroom, greeting select guests. Protocol dictated that only those she addressed could speak. The Queen approached Alaric, a high-ranking peer worthy of her attention. Verity prepared to curtsy and remain silent. Ashford, Queen Victoria said in her clear, precise voice. Alaric bowed. Your Majesty. The Queen's sharp eyes shifted to Verity. And who is this? Your Majesty, may I present Miss Verity Ashcroft of Yorkshire? The Queen studied Verity with a penetrating gaze that seemed to see straight through pretense to truth. Verity executed her deepest curtsy, eyes respectfully downcast. Ashcroft. You're the vicar's daughter who volunteers at the Foundling Hospital every Sunday. Verity's head snapped up in shock before she remembered protocol and lowered her eyes again. Yes, Your Majesty. Mrs. Thornbury speaks highly of you. She says the children adore you, that you bring your own books and spend hours with the smallest ones. The honor is entirely theirs, ma'am. They teach me far more than I could ever teach them. A slight smile touched the Queen's lips. Intelligence and humility. A rare combination, particularly in this room. She turned to Alaric. She has honest eyes, Ashford. Don't let her go. Honest women are more valuable than all the diamonds in this ballroom. The Queen moved on, leaving ripples of shock in her wake. Whispers erupted, the Queen approves, / did you hear what she said, / honest eyes, that's high praise. Queen Victoria just gave her blessing to a maid attending a royal ball. Sometimes the most powerful validation comes from recognizing someone's true character, not their title or wealth. If this moment moved you, if you believe that real worth should always be recognized regardless of birth, you understand why this story matters. Stay with us, because the battle isn't over yet. The hardest tests still lie ahead. After the Queen's formal circuit concluded, the ballroom grew stuffy and crowded. Alaric noticed Verity's hand trembling slightly on his arm. "Need air," he murmured. She nodded gratefully. He guided her toward a side door that led to the palace gardens. Other couples had escaped there as well, scattered across the moonlit terraces, but the space felt infinitely more private than the crowded ballroom. They walked along rose-lined paths, the orchestra's music distant now, filtered through stone walls and summer air. The scent of jasmine hung heavy in the June night. Verity stopped beneath an ancient oak, looking up at stars barely visible through London's glow. Tonight felt like a dream. "Thank you for giving me this." Alaric turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. "Verity, I didn't bring you tonight to give you a dream. I brought you because I'm falling in love with you, and I needed the world to see you as I see you." Her tears came then, not sad, but overwhelmed. "You, what?" His hands framed her face, thumbs brushing away tears. "I'm in love with you. Completely. Utterly. Irrevocably. You can't love me," she whispered. "I'm nobody. After tonight, I go back to being a maid and you go back to being a duke and the world doesn't allow. You're not nobody." His voice was fierce, brooking no argument. "You're everything. You're brilliant and compassionate and real. You make me want to live again. You make me believe in joy again." He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. "May I kiss you?" Her whispered "please" broke on a sob. The kiss was tender at first, a question being answered. Then it deepened, years of loneliness and grief and desperate hoping pouring into this single point of connection. When they broke apart, both were trembling. "What do we do now?" Verity asked against his shoulder. "The world won't allow this." "Then we change the world." His arms tightened around her. "Together." "Ashford. Where the devil are you?" The slurred shout came from the terrace entrance. Lord Octavius, drunk and furious, searching. They composed themselves quickly, stepping apart. Alaric kept Verity's hand in his, a small rebellion, a public claim. They returned to the ballroom to find the evening winding down, guests beginning to depart. Octavius blocked their path, swaying slightly, his face flushed with alcohol and rage. "Enjoy your little fantasy, Ashford." His voice carried venom. "Reality returns tomorrow. She'll still be a servant, and you'll still be expected to do your duty to your class." Alaric's response was cold as winter. "Reality has been here all along, Octavius. You simply refuse to see it." They walked past him, but Verity shivered despite the warm night. "He's planning something," she whispered. "Let him try." The perfect evening had survived every test, the cruel mockery, the social gauntlet, even the Queen's scrutiny. But London's cruelty was just beginning. June 16, 1855. Dawn broke over London with merciless clarity. Verity woke in her attic room, still wearing the sapphire gown. She'd fallen asleep too exhausted to change, too overwhelmed by the evening's magic to let it go. For one perfect moment, she lay in half-sleep, remembering the waltz, the kiss, Alaric's whispered confession. Then she heard the shouting from downstairs. She ran, still in the ball gown, her carefully arranged hair falling loose. The servants' stairs seemed endless. The breakfast room was chaos. Alaric stood surrounded by newspapers scattered across the table like evidence at a crime scene. His face was pale with fury. "Your Grace, what?" He looked up, his expression devastated. "Don't read them." But Mrs. Drummond was already crying, and Mr. Thornton looked murderous, and Verity's hands were already reaching for the nearest paper. The Morning Chronicle headline screamed, "Duke's disgrace, Ashford brings Maid to royal ball." Her hands trembled as she read. Sources close to His Grace report that Miss Verity Ashcroft has been living in the Duke of Ashford's household for 3 years under questionable circumstances. One must wonder if His Grace's judgment has been compromised by inappropriate familiarity with domestic staff. While the Queen was gracious to the young woman, society questions whether Her Majesty would have been so kind had she known the true nature of their relationship. The London Gazette, Maid Mania at St. James's, Society Scandal or Social Revolution. The Times, Ashford Servant Problem, Has Grief Driven the Duke to Madness? Every society column, every gossip rag, every respectable paper, all of them dissecting the previous evening with surgical cruelty. The articles suggested she'd seduced her employer, called her a fortune hunter, questioned her morals, implied she'd manipulated a grief-stricken duke. It's lies, Alaric said, his voice shaking. All of it. Octavius fed them this poison. Verity's vision blurred. She set down the paper carefully, her hands numb. The Morning Post arrived, a footman brought in a silver tray overflowing with letters. Alaric tore through them, his jaw tightening with each one. Lady Pembroke withdraws her invitation to the garden party. Lord Ashmont regrets he cannot receive us at his summer estate. The Dowager Countess of Essex must, with deep regret, sever all social connections. 20 letters. All withdrawals, all cutting social ties, all protecting their reputations by destroying his. Isolde entered, already dressed despite the early hour, her face like granite. It's worse than I thought. Half of Mayfair has turned against us overnight. Verity backed toward the door. Excuse me. She fled upstairs, her world crumbling. An hour later, she descended in her maid's uniform, carrying her small traveling bag. The breakfast room fell silent when she appeared in the doorway. Your Grace, I'm resigning my position effective immediately. Alaric stood so abruptly his chair toppled backward. Absolutely not. I won't let you be destroyed because of me. Her voice broke despite her efforts. Last night was beautiful, but it's over. I'm returning to Yorkshire. Isolde stepped forward. Sit down, child. You're not going anywhere. You don't understand. Verity's composure shattered. The papers are calling me a seductress, a schemer. Your reputation, your place in Parliament, your business connections, everything you've built, I won't watch it burn because of me. Alaric crossed to her in 3 strides. My reputation means nothing without you. You say that now, but... Visitors, Your Grace. Mr. Thornton's voice was tight with disapproval. Lady Sophronia Hartley and the Earl of Winchester. They say it's urgent. The drawing-room felt like a courtroom. The Earl of Winchester stood by the fireplace, pompous and certain of his position. Lady Sophronia perched on the sofa in lavender silk, her expression combining smugness with false sympathy. Ashford, let's resolve this unfortunate situation, Winchester began without preamble. There's nothing to resolve, Alaric replied coldly. Winchester smiled indulgently, like addressing a confused child. My dear boy, society is talking about nothing else. Your name is being dragged through every drawing room in London. But I have a solution that benefits everyone. He laid out his proposal with the confidence of someone who'd never been refused. Alaric would marry Sophronia immediately. A special license could be obtained within days. The wedding would restore his reputation, unite 2 powerful families, and end the scandal. As for Miss Ashcroft, Winchester continued, we're prepared to offer £5,000 for her discretion. She can return to Yorkshire, perhaps open a school. Start fresh where no one knows of this unfortunate episode. £5,000. Enough to secure Tobias's future, to live comfortably forever. Enough to disappear. Sophronia spoke for the first time, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I've always admired you, Alaric. We'd be perfect together. Everyone says so. The silence stretched. Then Alaric stood. When he spoke, his voice could have frozen hell itself. No. Winchester blinked. I beg your pardon. I said no. To all of it. Don't be foolish, boy. You've had your dalliance. Now do your duty to your class. My duty, Alaric interrupted, his voice dropping to something dangerous, is to my heart. And it belongs to Verity. Sophronia gasped. You choose her over me? I'm an earl's daughter. Alaric turned to her, his expression pitying. And she's a reverend's daughter who has more honor in her smallest finger than you possess in your entire body. She serves orphans every Sunday while you spend fortunes on gowns. She reads classical literature while you struggle through fashion magazines. And she possesses something you'll never understand, genuine compassion. Winchester's face purpled. You'll regret this, Ashford. I have influence. Then use it. I dare you. Alaric moved to the door, opening it. Get out of my house. After they left, Sophronia in tears, Winchester threatening dire consequences, Alaric found Verity standing in the hallway. She'd heard everything. You shouldn't have done that, she whispered. I'd do it 1,000 times over. The week that followed was brutal. Parliament peers avoided Alaric in corridors, suddenly discovering urgent business elsewhere when he approached. Business partners postponed meetings indefinitely. Even at church, the vicar suggested, with obvious discomfort, that perhaps they might prefer sitting in the back pews rather than the Ashford family box. Tradesmen who'd extended credit for decades suddenly required payment up front. Social invitations, 0. Calling cards, none. The entire structure of Alaric's social world simply vanished. Verity watched his isolation deepen, guilt crushing her chest. This was her fault. All of it. At White's club, Octavius held court, drunk and vicious. I heard she was pregnant, he announced to the gathered crowd. A lie. Trapped him with a bastard. She's been blackmailing him for months, another voice added. Another lie. They've been lovers for years. Everyone in the household knows. Lie upon lie upon lie. Phineas, uncomfortable, tried to intervene. Octavius, we've gone too far. Not far enough. He humiliated us. Now he learns what it costs to forget his place. 1 week after the ball, Verity made her decision. Late at night, while the house slept, she wrote a letter. Tears fell on the paper, smudging ink, but she forced herself to continue. Dearest Alaric. I'm leaving because I love you too much to watch you be destroyed. You gave me the most beautiful night of my life. You made me feel seen, valued, cherished. Thank you for that gift. Please don't search for me. Forget me and find happiness with someone appropriate. You deserve joy, not this nightmare I've brought to your door. All my love, always, V. She placed it on his library desk at midnight, then packed her small bag. 3 dresses. Her father's Bible. The handkerchief Cook had given her. At 3 in the morning, Thornwood House was silent as a tomb. Verity slipped out the servants' entrance into the London night. 5 o'clock. Alaric woke from nightmares to find himself in the library, fallen asleep at his desk. He saw the letter immediately. His hands shook as he read it. Then again. Then a third time, hoping the words would change. They didn't. He ran to her attic room. Empty. The bed made with military precision. No trace she'd ever existed. Mother. His shout echoed through the house. Isolde appeared in her dressing gown, alarmed. What is it? She's gone. Verity's gone. Then stop standing there like an idiot and go get her. Alaric rode through London at dawn like a madman, his horse's hooves clattering on cobblestones. No time for a carriage, every second mattered. The Golden Cross coaching inn at Charing Cross. The Yorkshire coach. It departed at 6. He arrived at 5:45 to find passengers boarding. His eyes scanned frantically. There. Climbing into the coach, a small bag in hand. Verity. She turned, saw him dismounting, and her face crumpled. No. Alaric, no. You have to let me go. He pushed through the crowd of travelers, breathless and disheveled. I won't. I can't. You're losing everything because of me. She was crying now, publicly, past caring who saw. Your friends, your reputation, your place in society. Then I'll lose everything. His voice carried across the courtyard, drawing stares. I don't care about society, or parliament, or titles, or what anyone thinks. A crowd was gathering. Morning travelers, curiosity seekers, people who recognized the Duke of Ashford making a scene. Alaric dropped to one knee in the muddy courtyard, pulling a ring from his pocket, his mother's ring, which he'd been carrying for days. Verity Ashcroft, will you marry me? The courtyard fell silent. You'll be ruined, she sobbed. Completely ruined. I'm already ruined without you. Say yes, Verity. Please say yes. She looked at his face, desperate, sincere, filled with unconditional love despite the cost. Looked at the ring. Looked at the life she'd be choosing, scandal, exile, struggle. Then she looked at the alternative, a life without him. Yes. The word was barely audible. God help us both, yes. He stood, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her deeply in front of everyone. The crowd erupted, some applauding, some gasping in scandalized shock, some crying at the romance of it. One elderly woman called out, "True love always wins." But others rushed off to spread the gossip. The mad Duke proposed to his maid in a muddy coaching inn. They rode back to Thornwood together on his horse, Verity clinging to him, both of them knowing they'd just chosen love over everything else. Isolde met them at the door. Well, it's official. We're complete social pariahs. Alaric helped Verity down, his arm around her. Good. The right people will stand by us. The rest were never worth keeping. But as they entered the house, the reality settled. They were engaged, in love, and socially destroyed. Love had won the battle. But the war was just beginning. 1 year later. September 1856. Thornwood House blazed with light for the inaugural gala of the Reverend Thomas Ashcroft Foundation, Verity's creation, funding schools for orphan children across England. The same ballroom that had once echoed with loneliness now rang with purpose. Donors mingled with former street children now learning to read. Society ladies who'd once mocked Verity now sought her approval for their charitable endeavors. Verity, Duchess of Ashford, stood at the podium in midnight blue silk, her lucky color. 6 months pregnant, she moved with the confidence of someone who'd walked through fire and emerged stronger. My father once told me that every person carries divine worth, she said, her voice clear and strong. That birth determines nothing about the soul's value. Tonight, we prove him right. The applause was thunderous. Alaric watched from beside the Dowager Duchess, his heart so full it hurt. You chose well, my son, Isolde whispered. I chose love. Everything else followed. After the last guest departed, Verity found Alaric in the portrait gallery, where he'd first asked the impossible question 15 months ago. He stood before Genevieve's portrait, but his expression held peace rather than grief. Talking to her? Verity asked softly. Thanking her. For the years we had. For teaching me what love could be. He turned to Verity. And for letting me go when I needed to find it again. Verity joined him, looking up at the painted face. Do you think she approves? I think she's dancing in heaven, delighted that I finally stopped being so stubborn. A sound from upstairs, little Lydia calling for them. 4 years old, adopted from the Foundling Hospital, bright as starlight and loved beyond measure. But Verity didn't move immediately. She turned to face Alaric, taking both his hands. Do you remember that night? When you asked me to the ball? Every detail. You dropped the newspaper. Your hands were shaking. I was terrified. Her eyes glistened. I thought accepting would destroy both our lives. It did destroy them, Alaric said, pulling her close. It destroyed the half-lived existence I was calling life. It destroyed your invisibility. It destroyed every wall we built to protect ourselves from feeling. He touched her face gently. And from those ashes, we built this. A real life. A real love. A real family. Mama. Papa. I can't sleep without a story. Lydia's voice grew more insistent. They climbed the stairs together, hand in hand. In the nursery, Lydia waited in her small bed, clutching a worn copy of Paradise Lost, the same edition Verity had been repairing that day in the library. "What story tonight, little love?" Verity asked, settling beside her. "Tell me the true one. About the maid and the Duke." Alaric laughed, sitting on Lydia's other side. "Again? We've told it 100 times. But it's the best story," Lydia insisted. "Because it's real." So they told it again, the ball, the cruelty, the courage, the vindication. Lydia knew every detail, but she listened with rapt attention as if hearing it for the first time. When they reached the ending, Lydia asked her favorite question, "And they lived happily ever after?" Verity and Alaric exchanged a glance. "They lived truly ever after," Verity corrected gently. "Not perfectly. Not without challenges. But truly. Authentically. Together." "That's better than happily," Lydia decided, yawning. After she fell asleep, they stood in the doorway watching her breathe. "In March, she'll have a brother," Alaric whispered, touching Verity's belly. "And she'll teach him that courage matters more than titles." They walked to their own chambers, but Alaric paused at the window overlooking Grosvenor Square. 15 months ago, he'd stood here alone, drowning in grief and duty. "What are you thinking?" Verity asked. "That I'm grateful I was brave enough to ask. And that you were brave enough to say yes." She joined him at the window. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd refused?" "Every day. And every day, I'm grateful I'll never know." Below them, London slept. The same city that had mocked them, shunned them, tried to destroy them. The same city that eventually had to admit it was wrong. "We changed something, didn't we?" Verity said quietly. "Not just for us. For everyone watching. We proved that love is stronger than status. That character trumps birth. That courage can move mountains." He turned her to face him. "You proved that, Verity. You walked into that ballroom knowing they'd try to tear you apart, and you did it anyway. Because you made me believe I could." "No." His voice was fierce. "You already had that strength. I just gave you the stage to show it." Their kiss was tender, deep, filled with everything they'd overcome and everything still to come. 5 years later. September 1861. The same portrait gallery, now expanded with new paintings. Genevieve's portrait still held its place of honor, but beside it hung a new one, Verity in her sapphire gown from the ball, captured by a master artist. Below both portraits, a brass plaque read, "Lady Genevieve Blackwood, 1820 to 1847, beloved wife and mother. She taught him love. Lady Verity Ashcroft Blackwood, Duchess of Ashford, 1826, beloved wife and mother. She taught him life." Alaric stood with his arm around Verity, both watching their children play, Lydia, now 9, reading to her younger brothers, Thomas, 4, and Edmund, 2. "Do you ever think about that night?" Verity asked. "What if you hadn't asked? What if I'd said no? I think the universe would have found another way to bring us together. Some forces are inevitable. You believe in fate now. I believe in courage. Yours." He kissed her temple. "You're the bravest person I've ever known." I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's loving despite it. Choosing despite it. Living despite it. Lydia looked up from her book. "Mama, when I grow up, I want to be brave like you." Verity's eyes filled with tears. "You already are, sweetheart." As the evening sun painted the gallery in gold, the family stood together beneath the portraits, proof that sometimes the most impossible dreams become the most beautiful realities. The lonely duke who took his maid to the royal ball had found everything he'd been searching for, a life worth living, a love worth fighting for, and a legacy worth leaving behind. Because in the end, the greatest love stories aren't about fairy tale endings. They're about two people brave enough to choose each other when the whole world said they shouldn't. And then living that choice, every single day, until choosing becomes as natural as breathing. If you've made it to the end of this story, you've just spent time with Verity and Alaric, two people who risked everything for love, who chose courage over comfort, who proved that your worth isn't determined by your birth but by your character. But here's what matters more than the story. Someone in your life right now feels exactly like Verity did before the ball, invisible, overlooked, convinced they don't belong. Maybe it's the person who serves your coffee every morning. Maybe it's the colleague everyone ignores in meetings. Maybe it's the friend who always laughs at everyone else's jokes but whose own stories are never heard. Maybe it's the family member who's been made to feel less than because of their job, their education, their circumstances. This story only matters if it changes how you see people. If you connected with Verity's journey, if you felt her fear, celebrated her triumph, cried at her vindication, then you understand something profound. Every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about, carrying dreams you've never asked about, possessing worth that has nothing to do with their title or bank account. Here's my challenge to you. In the next 24 hours, I want you to truly see someone. Not just look at them, see them. Ask their name. Ask their story. Treat them like they matter, because they do. The barista. The janitor. The delivery driver. The person everyone else walks past without noticing. Be someone's Alaric. Be the person who sees worth where others see invisibility. Because Verity's story isn't just fiction. It's happening right now, in your city, in your workplace, in your community. People are being dismissed, overlooked, told they're not enough, and they're believing it. If this story moved you, don't let that feeling fade. Let it change you. Like, comment, share, but more importantly, go out and live it. Because the world doesn't need more people who know the right words. It needs more people who do the right thing. Don't just consume this story and move on. Let it convict you. Let it challenge you. Let it transform how you treat the invisible people in your life. This is your call to action. What you do next matters more than any story ever could. Will you be the person who sees? Or the person who looks away? The choice, like always, is yours.